In this video, we are going to be talking about databases. Now, a database is a collection of information that is organized so that it can easily be accessed, managed, and updated. Okay, in one view, databases can be classified according to the types of content. It might be bibliographic, it might be full text, it might be images, it might be numeric, whatever. Okay, the database is just used for that data collection and organization. Okay, now in computing, databases are sometimes classified according to their organizational approach, the most prevalent approach in the relational database. Okay, now a tabular database in which data is defined so that it can be reorganized and accessed in a number of different ways. Okay, now a distributed database can be one that is dispersed or replicated among different points in the network. An object-oriented database is one that is concurrent and the data defined in object classes and subclasses. Okay, now how a database is important in what we do. What is the importance of a database? Why do we need a database? You might want to ask yourself, is this database really important for me? Now, the database is really important in the sense that it manages data efficiently and allows users to perform multiple tasks with ease. And a database management system stores, organizes, and manages a large amount of information within a single software application. Okay, we're going to talk about one of that application in this course, and that'll be one of the last things we're going to do. At the end, we're going to put all the things we've learned together and create a very small a PHP MySQL application. And I will leave that with a goodbye. Okay, so database management systems are important to businesses and organizations because they provide a highly efficient method for handling multiple types of data, and some of the data are easily managed with this type of system. It might be employee record, it might be student information, it might be payroll, it might be accounting, project management, inventory, library books, several of them. And you might know some applications that are called database applications. One of the most popular and easiest applications is the Microsoft Access. Okay, there are other applications like the PostgreSQL. We have the Microsoft SQL Server, and one of the most advanced ones, which is called Oracle. Okay, now database have a common language which is called SQL. Okay, structured query language. Now some people call it SQL for short, and in this course I'm going to be calling it MySQL. So is a database language. It's called SQL. Okay, and it's a database language. Now without database management, tasks have to be done manually, and I think that we cannot take more time, and data can be categorized and structured to suit the needs of the company organization. Okay, now data is entered into a system and accessed on a routine basis by assigned users. Each user may have an assigned password to gain their access to their part of the system. Okay, multiple users can use the system at the same time in different ways. Okay, now we're going to look at how we can link or relate PHP and SQL. We're going to look at how we can use PHP to fetch information from a database, to write information to the database, to update a database, to do many things in the database. Okay, but in this particular course, we're going to be looking at the introductory part of databases, MySQL, and we're going to be using an application which comes with the WAMP we installed at the very beginning of this course, and the application is called PHP MyAdmin. Okay, now PHP MyAdmin is a free and open source tool that is written in PHP. Well, you might like to hear that, and it's intended to handle the administration of MySQL with the use of a web browser. Yes. Okay, now you must have a web browser in order to use my PHP MyAdmin very effectively and efficiently, and it can perform various tasks like other database applications, and some of those tasks are creating a database, modifying a database, deleting database tables, fields, and rows, and you can also use it to execute SQL statements and manage user data and permissions. Okay, there are a lot of things you can do with PHP MyAdmin in relation to databases, and you can also use your PHP script to query the database. We're going to look at some of these things, and let me just stop right here and not talk too much about this. In the next video, we'll dive into actions and see how some of these things work. Hello and welcome back. You are currently looking at the PHPMyAdmin interface on the browser, on my browser Mozilla Firefox, and it has a quite nice interface, right? Yeah, I like the interface like this, and we're simply going to look at some things on the interface here so as to enable us to understand one or two things when we dive into using it. Okay, so now this is the interface of PHPMyAdmin, and we'll quickly talk about the users here. Now, if you want to connect to a database, you first of all need to tell the PHP, the server that you're using. Now, since we are installed on a local computer, our server becomes localhost. Okay, now the next thing you need to do is to tell PHP the username that you're using. Okay, now as you can see here, the username here is roots. Okay, now they have 5 users, of which roots is 3. Okay, now you can use roots as localhost, the host as localhost. You can use root as the username and this as the host. Now they're all the same thing. This is a numeric, this is in its own way, and this is what in words. Okay, so this is how you can get the user of a database. And mind you, any user you use to access a database, it only brings you things available on a database with regards to the privileges assigned to you as a user. Okay, so you can create a user from here, and you can decide to what the username of the user, the host of the user is always advised to use localhost, and the password of the user right here. Okay, you can also generate a password if you don't have a password, and it gives you a nicely generated password. Okay, so that is how to assign a user to in PHPMyAdmin. I'll go back now to create that. So we've talked about 3 things here: the local host, the username, okay, and the password. Okay, those are the 3 basic requirements to connect to a database using PHP. So don't forget. Now if you look at the left side of my browser here, or your browser if you have the same page open with me, now you'll see a PHPMyAdmin at the top and a list of database. Now all these things you see here are the database that was created by default while WAMP was installed, when we installed it. Okay, I have not created any database recently, but to create a database you just need to click on new right here, and then you see where you are given the opportunity or the field to write the name of your database. So our database is let's say our database name is course1. okay, let's say course1 like this, and then when you click on create, you discover that our database course1 is now created for us, and the name is there on the left panel. Okay, so if you look at that, you discover that our database have no table. Okay, so you can decide to create a table, tell the user the name of the table. Okay, let's say we want our name to be user, and here you tell the number of columns you want your table to have. Now before I touch that, I would like to explain what I mean by number of columns. Okay, now in a database you have tables, okay, and in your tables you have rows and you have columns. Now the rows carry records of a particular individual or a particular ID. Okay, we'll talk about an ID, and the column carries a specific record about each ID in that particular table. So you might have something like an ID. Now an ID is a unique identifier that separates one particular record from another in a table. Okay, so now that's an ID. So an ID has its own column, and it's always a number which is set to auto increment without the user doing it manually. So you can decide to have a username as a column of its own. You can decide to have password as a column of its own. You can decide to have first name, okay, and last name, and as so many of them as you want. Email. Okay, now let's stop there. So all these now become columns in your database. So if we are going to follow what I just did here, that means our columns will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So in that case, we'll put 6 columns here and click on go to open, where we'll fill our table columns or names for our column. So the first one we have here is an ID, okay, and the data type, we treated data type in PHP and other videos. The data type is the same, just some slight difference when it comes to SQL. So here we have an ID of int, which stands for integer, and the length, we want the length to just be 2 characters long. We don't want more than 99 users there. So here you have something called let's go to the right a little. So you have something called AI. Okay, now the AI means auto increment. Now what this means is, for each record that you add to the database, this particular column will auto increment itself to update the ID of that particular record. Okay, now if you don't understand that, don't worry, when we get into it practically, you'll see what I'm talking about. So here we have first name, okay, we have last name, we have email, we have password, okay, we have username here, username. Okay, now anytime you're writing names for columns in a table, it's always advisable not to write with spaces. It's either you're writing them join in a joint form, or you're separating them using an underscore, or but do not give spaces while writing it, because it might create an error in your database. Okay, now for our first name, we want the data type to be variable character, is varchar, and you see it gives us a hint, says a variable character has a length of 0 to 65, 535 at most, and it's a string. The effective maximum length is subject to the maximum row size. So here we are going to put 50 characters. Same thing goes here. Okay, let's do that quickly. 50 characters here, and our email, we want our email to be 70 characters, for instance. Now our password, we want our password to be, let's set our password to be a variable character for now. We'll talk about passwords later, and we'll set that to be 36. Okay, now the proper way to set a password here is not a variable character, okay, unless you know you're going to use an MD5 hash in PHP to encrypt the password. Okay, so that is it. If you're going to encrypt the password, then you use a variable character, so that PHP will now encrypt the password and place the value of the encrypted password on this particular column. Okay, so the username, same thing as variable character, and here we'll do 50. Now when you are through with what you're doing, you click on go to create the table. Okay, now it automatically creates the table when you click save, and your table becomes saved in your database. As you can see, we have one database in our table called user, though we don't have any record in it yet, but that is how to create a database and a table in a database on PHPMyAdmin. Now in the next video, we're going to look at more things we can do with PHPMyAdmin, but until then, see you in the next. In our last video, we looked at how to connect to a database, the basic requirements needed to connect to a database, and we looked at how to create a database and a table in PHPMyAdmin. Now we're going to look at how we can edit what we created. Now this is the whole thing we created in our last video, from ID to username. Now you can decide to edit a particular column here from your structure tab on your PHPMyAdmin. So now when you want to do that, you see change here, right here you see change. Now you can edit individually, and you can decide to edit all at the same time according to how you check mark them here. Now the ones you check mark, you can edit them by clicking here, but if you did not check mark it, you can decide to just click on change, and it brings out a column for you to make changes to it. Okay, so if you want to move the column some steps down, or after a particular column to the right, or to the left, then you can choose that on the move column region there. Okay, so after everything, you can decide to click on save to save what you're doing. Now you can decide to go through all of these to get more knowledge about what some of them mean, and then when you get there, you also understand what is happening and how it works. Okay, so we'll save that, and you can decide to click on the ID and make it a primary key. Okay, now I've made it a primary key. Do you want to execute the following query? Now this is why I like PHPMyAdmin. Now it gives you the SQL code of what you are trying to do, okay, without you typing it manually. Now this is very good for beginners of SQL that don't know how to write SQL code that much. That means you are not alone. You can still use this program and you do your thing perfectly well. Now when I click yes, you discover that the query has been run successfully, and the ID field now becomes my primary key. Okay, so you can decide to change the view of your the structure of your table. Okay, now if you don't like it that way, you can bring it back to normal. Now you can decide to add more columns, either to the end of the table right here, or to the beginning of the table, or after a particular column, and here you decide how many columns you want to add. Okay, so that is it for there, and let's quickly add some data and let's see how that works. Now to insert data, we can use our PHP script or code to insert data to the database, but if you don't want to do that, you can also decide to insert it manually. And to do that, you just click on insert right here, and you have the opportunity to insert what you want. Now we'll leave ID field because we've set it to auto increment. Now here we'll set this to varchar already, so the only thing you have to do is to work with the value column here. So here we have Thomas Occasion. So here we have Occasion, and here we have the atoms at yahoo.com. Okay, so password, let's say atoms123. Okay, and then username, let's say atoms. All right, now this is a particular field that now I can decide to fill this as well. Let's say this is Clement. Let's just fill two fields here, and let's click on go. Okay, now you see when it inserts it, it gives you the SQL code used to run that particular or execute that particular script. Okay, now you can decide to generate a PHP code here, and you see it gives you a nicely arranged PHP code without you stressing yourself that you want to type anything. So you can use this in your PHP script if you want to make your work faster and maybe change one or two things to variables so that they will be dynamic. Okay, so that is it. You can decide to browse so that you see the structures or the data that you inserted into your database. Now when you browse, you see the data there. You can decide to delete a particular one here. You can decide to edit and maybe append to that particular row, or you can decide to copy the row that is duplicated. Okay, now you can decide to export your table if you want to. You can decide to delete it. In SQL it's called drop table, and you can decide to alter the table or change the table here. Okay, now take a look at these. There are other things here: privileges, operations, triggers, take a look at them and play with them, get to understand how they work, because we're not going to be talking about all of them. So in the next video we'll be looking at how to connect to the database and connect to the server using PHP. I think this is okay for MySQL for now, and we'll be talking about it as we continue with the course. So I'll see you in the next. In this video we're going to be looking at how to connect to our server, and before you do anything from PHP to your database, you first have to of all connect to your server. Then from there you can maybe write to the server, or maybe append to the server, or extract data from the server. Whatever you want to do, you first have to of all connect to the server. So let's quickly look at how we can do that. In our previous video I told you that we need 3 arguments to connect to the server, of which the first is the host. Okay, now the host in our case is localhost, so just write localhost like this. Okay, now the next thing is what we call the username. So assign all of that to a variable. So we'll say username is now our username was root, so say root, and the last one is the password. Okay, now the password, from what we saw, we don't have a password, so it's just going to be like that. Okay, no spaces. Okay, no spaces because there's no password. Okay, so now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to use a PHP function for MySQL, and the function is written as MySQL connect or MySQLi connect. Okay, and then you supply the 3 arguments, of which the first one is host, the second one is username, and the last one is password. Okay, so we can check this to know if we are connected. Now let's quickly go to our browser and refresh. You discover that it showed us nothing. That means we can assume that we are connected, but to prove that, we'll quickly, you can use an if-else statement, or you can just say or die. Now you can give your own error statement, like die cannot connect to database. Okay, like that, and then you put your delimiter there. So let's quickly make a mistake here on purpose. Let's save that and let's go and refresh. Now you see that there's an error. Okay, now the error is telling you that just something is wrong somewhere, cannot connect to database. Okay, so here we're going to put that back, and we'll use an if-else statement to still check. Now remove this and we'll use an if-else statement. Now we can say if, okay, let's assign this to a variable. Let's say this is connect. Okay, let's say this is connect, and we can now say if connect. Okay, if it's connected, then we want it to echo connected. Okay, else it should echo cannot connect to database. Okay, cannot connect to database. Now let's save that and see what we'll get in our browser. Let's refresh that and you see connected. That means our connection is okay. Now that is how to connect to a database, but you discover that if we make a mistake here, let's say we change this to root instead of root, and we come here and refresh, it tells you, okay, so let's go back and click on that. Let me save that. Let me save that quickly. Okay, and let's make a mistake here. Let me still save that. Let's refresh, and you see cannot connect to what database. Now, to remove the error and allow our own error to be displayed, you pop an @ sign here. Okay, you pop an @ sign there, and when you refresh, you discover that your error goes out and the else part of our statement is being displayed for us. So that is how to connect to a database. I'll go back and put everything back the way it was. So that is how to connect to a database. And don't forget that you always need to connect to a database before you do anything with your database. I'll see you in the next video. Still working on this video. We're going to look at how to connect to a database, and this one is going to be very brief because it only requires 2 arguments, and this one will call it let's call it database. Okay, and let's give it the function is called MySQL select DB. Okay, it's called MySQL select DB, like this, and you feed it with only 2 variables. Okay, now I am using the SQLi function, so we're going to use my SQLi function there. So my SQLi select DB. Now the only 2 arguments that it uses is the first one that connects to the database. In this case, we have connect, and then the second one is the name of the database. Now if you check, you discover that we created a database here called course1, so we want to connect to course1, and that's what we're going to do. So you are connecting to course1. Okay, that is the name of our database, course1. So I'll save that, and now let's say we are doing this for database, since we already know our server is connected. So this is for database. Now let me do a Ctrl+S, go to our browser and check. Okay, let me go back and do that again. Cannot connect to database. Okay, so that means there is a mistake somewhere. Let's check that quickly. Okay, the mistake was from me. I spelled course1 wrongly. This is supposed to be an underscore. Okay, so let's check that again, and okay, now we are connected. So it connected to the first one, connected to the database, and the second one connected to the first one connected to the server, and the second one connected to the database. Now there's a different way to connect to the database without connecting to the server. This kind, you just connect to the server and to the database at once. And to do that, let's erase this part, and let's assign our database a name. So let's call that DB, and our DB name is course1. Okay, so now on the MySQLi connect function, you just change it to MySQLi select DB. So this will be MySQLi select DB, and then you give the 4th variable here, which will be DB. Okay, now what this does is it connects to the server, and at the same time connects to what? The database. Okay, now if we check that, if we change this to connect and refresh, you discover, okay, let's see. Okay, so the function is MySQLi connect, not MySQLi select DB. Okay, so it connects to the database and it connects to the server and to the database at the same time. Okay, so this is how you can connect to a database and how you can connect to a server. Now in our next video, we'll start building a small project, a very small one, that will put all the things we've learned together and create a form that when filled we send the values from the form field into a table in our database. Okay, so I'll see you there.